Greetings. This is Rabbi Aaron Boxt back with my podcast this week. I want to talk about something that is probably not a surprise, but maybe it's a surprise coming from my podcast. I'm not sure, but I went to see Wicked, the new movie with Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo and Jeff Goldblum and so many others, and with my family a week and a half ago, and I had seen the musical Wicked years ago, but I really didn't know or remember much about it except for the Defying Gravity and a couple other things. But I was completely blown away by this movie. The music, the dancing, the choreography, the acting. It was just amazing, and left me with a lot of questions because I don't remember the musical that much, and I don't have the dedication to it like, say, my daughter does or many other theater people. And so I've been listening to the soundtrack from the movie as well as the soundtrack from the original musical, and doing a lot of research online and watching shorts and videos about or interviews with the actors, and it's just it's one of those, in my opinion, life changing movies, because as a kid growing up, before the musical even came, of course I saw the Wizard of Oz, and my sister is a huge Judy Garland fan. Wizard of Oz was her jam forever, probably still is. And what kid didn't watch Wizard of Oz and think about all the possibilities that were out there, and all the characters that were in the Wizard of Oz and the meaning behind those characters. And growing up as a kid, the Wicked Witch of the West, she was, the worst of the wicked witches that ever were, and she was evil, and Glinda the Good Witch was a good witch, and the Wizard of Oz, although he tricked them, he was still good, and then Wicked came along, and it's like, whoa, totally changes the story of the Wizard of Oz, especially if you know what happens in the second half of Wicked, which of course we have to wait another year to see the movie, but obviously you can just listen to the musical or find a bootleg recorded version of the musical somewhere on YouTube. Not that I would recommend that, but it's out there. And you can see what happens in the musical, and you can see how the changes from the movie to the musical, how the story changes. And as a kid growing up, the Wicked Witch was the Wicked Witch. She was green, she was ugly, she was evil, and Dorothy melting her and killing her at the end of the movie, that was the best thing that could happen, right? And then you watch Wicked, or you listen to the music of Wicked, or you read the story of Wicked, and you recognize that things are never what they seem to be, or things aren't always what they seem to be. And you really have to dive into the story of Wicked. Not too far, but you have to really dive into the story of Wicked to see Elphaba, who becomes the Wicked Witch, goes through quite a metamorphic change in her character, in her personality, that was brought on by everybody else's reaction, attitude, way that they acted towards her. And at the end of the day, she's really not wicked. Everybody has the ability to be wicked. We all have, in Judaism tradition, we say the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Hatov, the good inclination and the evil inclination. You've seen cartoons with the bad angel and the good angel on the shoulders. It's the same kind of idea. We all have the ability, we all have the possibility of being bad or good. It's within all of us. Yet sometimes we are driven to act in certain ways that really are just a reaction to what other people or how other people have responded or treated you. Um, I remember doing a funeral, officiating a funeral in my third or fourth year as a rabbi, and the son that I met with, who was responsible for putting everything together, he made it very clear to me from the very beginning that this would be a very small funeral. Maybe three people that would be there. None of his siblings, none of his children, none of the deceased grandchildren would be there. And the explanation was that this was a nasty, mean man who was mean to everyone in his whole life, who had never done anything good for his children, and on and on and on and on and on. And I met someone at the funeral who is actually a very dear friend of this man, and the only one that had anything good to say about the deceased. And he said, yes, this man had the tendency to be, full of himself, selfish, maybe even evil. But it was a response often because the response often to what was going on around him. This man never really had any love from his parents or his siblings and grew up very alone. And when he met his wife, who became his wife, they shared a love that nobody really knew about except for the two of them and this friend who was talking about him. Not even the children of the deceased knew about this relationship. They thought their parents had a relationship that was based on need, like that it wasn't a real relationship, and they had no idea that this man and this wife had such a love. And I remember that funeral so vividly because it was the first time I can remember in my life in which I realized that now there are people who in the world who are pure evil, don't get me wrong, but the very high majority of people in the world that are quote unquote evil also can be very good. It just depends on what else is going on around them. And I think that this is a perfect example of Elphaba. Elphaba comes, she's green, she's ridiculed by everybody, she's kind of keeps to herself, she's kind of aloof because of that. Then you've got Glinda, who, has been given everything in life, and she's also aloof, but full of herself and completely selfish, and is portrayed as this good person when really she had some pretty nasty tendencies herself. And then when the two of them become friends, and you really see this in various different steps within the musical, both acts of the musical, you see that they both have a tendency to be good and not good. And I think that's the message that I want this podcast to deliver today. It doesn't matter who you are, what your life is. We all have a decision to make every day when we wake up. We all have a decision to make when we go about our day. And the decision is, do we treat others with kindness and love? Or do we treat them with disdain and hatred? It doesn't matter what other people do, what other people say. And this is the hardest part. It's hard to love somebody or treat somebody with kindness when they're doing the opposite to you. But it's in those moments when we have to work even harder to do that. So that's my challenge. That's my message from Wicked, and my challenge for you today is go about your life recognizing that what's going on in someone else's life may have nothing to do with you, but what you have to do is what has to do with you. And what has to do with you are the decisions that you make and how you act in certain situations or in all situations. So that's it. Be kind. Be generous. love, regardless of what other people are saying or doing, because ultimately you can only control what you do. That's my message for this week. See you next week.